Welcome to Me, Kevin Reacts. This is a show where I react to other people's financial decisions and teach you how to avoid common mistakes. Today, I'm going to react to a financial guru in the blogging space, the Financial Samurai, who wrote a piece on CNBC, and I'm going to pick apart some of the big financial mistakes he just made. Some of them, obviously, he is self-proclaiming he did, which is fair of him to share, so we gotta give him credit. He's admitting to some mistakes. But some of his mistakes are being justified by other things that are pretty big mistakes as well. I want to talk about them because, folks, I think we can learn a lot from this one. So let's get started. Here it is. This is the article, folks. What missing out on $150,000 in Tesla gains taught him about good investing. I feel like an idiot is how he starts. Folks, there's a whole lot more than just missing out and the SOMO of this stock that goes wrong in this article. There's a lot to learn in this one, so let's get started. But first, he really begins by explaining that he ended up selling 70% of his holdings in Tesla when Tesla was around $888 per share on June 5th. Right now, the stock is trading for just above $2,000 per share. Let's see it exactly here. Tesla stock, and we are returning $2,008 per share right now on Yahoo Finance here. So let's take a peek here. He bought these shares in 2018. He bought $55,000 worth of Tesla stock at about $298. Now it's trading for around $2,008, but he sold at $888. And he says that he decided to sell 70% of his holdings because I just couldn't take the volatility anymore. All right, let's start getting into some of the lessons. Lesson number one. This is, in my opinion, the most important lesson when it comes to stocks. If you're going to pick a stock and not an index fund, you gotta have really good reasons for buying the stock. Otherwise, when there's volatility, you end up twisting and turning at night and you feel like crap. The stock goes down and you just get this like gut-wrenching feeling in your stomach of, oh, I just can't take this anymore. The volatility's killing me. I can't take the ups and downs anymore. And later in the article, Sam says the only reason he bought Tesla stock was because, quote, after hearing a friend crow on and on about how much he loved his new Model 3, I decided to buy the stock. And that's where problem number one really highlights itself, having absolutely zero methodology in buying a stock. And when you go into a stock with nothing other than, looks like a good stock, it's been green for a while, may as well try it, car looks cool, must be a good stock, no research, nothing interesting to know about the company, then it makes it very difficult to actually stay with that stock through volatile times. And it makes you much more likely to sell potentially before a big run up. And this is very common because, again, like if you don't fully believe in the company, you see the stock price go down and you're like, oh, it's killing me. Whereas if you fully believe in a company and you see the share price go down, you look and you go, I'm gonna buy more because now it's an even better deal. This is why index funds are really so popular and why they're such a good idea. It's not like you buy into the S&P 500 and tomorrow you wake up and you're like, oh, I can't believe I bought into the S&P 500. How stupid could I be? That doesn't really happen with index funds, right? It happens with individual stocks. So in my opinion, the solution to problem number one, only handpick stocks that you believe in the long term. Unless, of course, you're a trader, then that's totally different. But in terms of being an investor, only handpick stocks that you believe in for the long term. And if you can't handpick, then get a broad index fund, just sort of a diversified index fund. Anyway, Sam goes on to complain that he lost about $150,000 in potential value because he sold the stock before it ran up. This opens the door to problem number two. In fact, here it is within the article. Problem number two is SOMO. And what I call SOMO is the sadness of having missed out. This is very, very toxic. And ultimately what SOMO does is it does two things. It jades you against investing in stocks or ever trying again, or you end up increasing your risk tolerance on your next stock so you could try to recover. Both of these are very bad. And so what I recommend you do is take out a little piece of paper, write down your loss, like SOMO missed out on 150K, write it down on a piece of paper, put it in a drawer, and never think about it again because you wrote it down. Why do you have to keep reminding yourself about it? And guess what the beauty is? You'll probably never look at that note again. Sam then, in the article, goes on to explaining that it's very hard to outperform the market and talks about how, you can't time the market and look how many hedge funds have consistently or other mutual funds have consistently lagged behind the broader market. And he gives us some examples and so on and so forth. And this is a very common argument that we hear that, you can't individually pick stocks and beat the market because none of these highly paid hedge funds have been able to do this. However, this is where I actually bring up mistake number 3, and that's comparing yourself to a hedge fund. See, hedge funds usually look to lock in profits and gains to show their customers that they're doing a good job. In fact, it's very common for a hedge fund to see a stock run up and then buy a stock that ran up and then it runs up even more, but then they bought in high and then they end up potentially getting hurt. And they do that because when their customers see, hey, Tesla stock's trending, how come you haven't bought that yet? I want you to buy it. Otherwise, I'm gonna leave the fund. That oftentimes leads hedge funds to actually make these purchases they shouldn't be making in the first place to appease their customers. So you have this consideration you have to figure in here. If you're comparing yourself to a hedge fund, realize how different you are. You, as an individual investor, are trying to build an awesome retirement portfolio. Hedge funds are looking, how can we show as much profit as possible in this quarter so that our customers don't leave us and go to a different hedge fund? That's why they hedge in the first place. They're hedging and paying premiums to try to protect themselves in the event of a downturn, but that really leads to more fees that you might not have to pay in the long run. This isn't saying that hedging is bad. We can get into a whole discussion on that in a different video. The point is, and the big bottom line is, don't compare yourself to hedge funds. We have a different mindset than a hedge fund. And so in my opinion, it is possible for an individual investor to follow solid and sound principles and actually beat hedge funds at their own game because we have a different reward structure. We're not getting excited and jumping up and down because our clients are calling us and sending us gift baskets going, ha, so glad you were in Tesla. You better pick the next winner too. You don't have to take those high risk moves because some of those hedge funds, they buy in way too late and then they get burned. After all, there's a saying in the stock market, and it's that securities are not bought, they're sold. AKA, a good salesperson gets you to invest, not good fundamentals. Anyway, Sam then goes on to say that he personally tries to invest 10 to 20% into individual stocks, and the rest he tries to put into, the broader maybe S&P 500. And he says that, hey, the saying is no risk, no reward. This in my opinion is potentially a little bit overstated as well, simply because you can match a lot of the diversity that an S&P 500 index fund gives you if you pick 30 to 45 stocks in different industries. So you can actually be a stock picker and have a lot of the same sort of ups and downs and general trends that an index fund offers you. But now you're picking your favorite companies and your stocks and the stocks you believe in. And think about the S&P 500. When you put money into the S&P 500, you invest more money into tobacco companies than you invest into Starbucks. It just is what it is. I'd rather not pick the tobacco companies. Just saying. Now we're about to get to a part that's a little more frustrating, but something that we have to pit stop by because of the way he wrote this in the article is he reminds us to think about capital gains. And to me, this is a bingo number 1. So far, we've only had mistakes that I've nailed, but I gotta give Sam credit here. Bingo, bingo, bingo. For example, if I sold my Tesla shares today, on most of those shares, I'd be losing 50% instantly to taxes, thanks to living in California and short-term capital gains rates. Selling stocks and not considering taxes is a big, 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 big mistake. See, I would rather hold on to a stock knowing that if I sold it in a short-term basis, I'm giving away 50% to the state of California and the federal government. I'd almost rather hold it and just say, please let the market fall 50%, then I'll buy more and not pay the government. But anyway, obviously, I don't want anybody's stocks to fall 50%, but you definitely want to keep in mind your short-term and long-term capital gains implications. So my big thing is I try to avoid selling whenever possible. Now, that doesn't mean you could stick with a company forever. Some companies can be really great now, but they end up not becoming so great in the long term. So you definitely have to pay attention to your portfolio. Okay, so then we get to talking about funny money. So he says that any kind of money that he makes from his investments in the form of like an unexpected windfall gain, faster than expected investment gains, that's what he calls funny money. And he says that his Tesla gains were funny money. So he decided that he would take his Tesla gains and turn them into real assets. First of all, I just want to say, like, I hear this so much, oh, stocks aren't real assets, they're just paper. You know, ultimately, everything's just paper. My right to own real estate is also just paper. So I don't love it when people say real assets, but I'm not gonna nail him on that because a much bigger mistake comes up. But before we go on to the big mistake, I just want to make a note that he suggests that when a stock does exceptionally well, it's okay to take some of those gains and use it as funny money. In my opinion, I disagree with that because stocks don't go up in a straight line. Stocks are very volatile. So when you have a portfolio of investments, you're always going to see some ups and some downs. That's very normal. Just because you saw more ups on one stock and less ups in another doesn't mean that this was some unexpected windfall. It just means overall on your portfolio's average, you're growing, and that's normal. You're going to see that. One year this stock does really well. The next year this stock does really well. One year a certain stock does really badly. It's all that fluctuation that balances out in a portfolio. So I don't know that it's really such a good idea to say, oh yeah, something had a faster than expected investment gain. We have no idea what's going to happen in the future. We can only estimate that we think our portfolio is going to do well in the future. And this is one of the first cautions I give when we start thinking about these unexpected gains as funny money. So I'm going to give that warning number 4. But instead, this is where things get a little bit entertaining. We're now going to turn his Tesla money into real assets. After all, what good is an investment unless, you can better your life with it, so he says. And okay, I get that premise, but we're running into some problems here because Sam's definition of real assets are the following. I used funny money to pay for a new hot tub, nice shoes for my kids, and build a deck off my main bathroom. Folks, that is not a real asset. That is something that I call in my investing and money courses, butter me up. Big mistake. This is not funny money. This is taking profits and using it not to invest into something else, to hedge or minimize your risk because Tesla went up to 888. You're literally taking money off the table to spend it on crap. That is a big mistake. So Sam literally got nervous about Tesla stock, dumped the stock, and decided to buy a spa. And the fact that he took his money out of the stock to buy a spa and shoes and build a deck makes me want to vomit. And he paid taxes on his gains. Now, he justifies this by saying that the whole point of investing is to have a better life. And I agree and disagree here. See, you invest to build wealth, and you don't want to burn that wealth while you're trying to grow your wealth. Think about it this way. My goal, and this is exactly what I do, is I like to burn passive income, not wealth. That's different. Passive income sometimes can be considered funny money, especially as you get closer to retirement. Think about this analogy. Let's say you have a goose and it lays a golden egg every so often, but today it laid 2 eggs. So I'm not gonna kill the goose because it gave me 2 eggs and I got an unexpected higher return. I'm not gonna kill my wealth or the thing that's producing my wealth. And instead, I guess today I'm either eating 2 eggs or I'm gonna continue to eat 1 egg and I'm gonna take that extra unexpected gain and I'll reinvest that into maybe growing a second goose. So it'd be one thing if he sold some of his Tesla shares and said, you know what, I'm gonna invest in another stock just to diversify a bit. That'd be fine because now you're still keeping your wealth consistent. And you can't SOMO about the gains you missed out. But to sell your Tesla stock or some stock that you think is funny money to buy a spa and shoes and a deck off your bathroom? Sam, I am extremely disappointed. That's all I have to say. Very, very, very disappointed. Now, Sam then does say, and I think this is just further justification because I wouldn't be surprised if he spent his, $80K or whatever he had invested on the tub and shoes and the deck. Tubs are expensive. My tub, I got used. My hot tub. I love getting hot tubs used. The depreciation on those things is insane, and they still work used. Anyway, then he says, and since real estate figures are lagging the stock market, I'm planning to buy another home in San Francisco. Well, this is half true. Real estate has done substantially better during this pandemic than stocks. We didn't have the crash and then up. Now, I like this crash somewhat because it created a buying opportunity, which we didn't have so much of in real estate. Now, Sam did say that he's looking to go shopping for real estate in San Francisco, and most of you know that I am bullish on buying real estate. I'm all for buying real estate, so I like this idea with Sam. I don't know how I feel about buying in a big city right now. I do think if I were to negotiate in a big city, I would absolutely require getting a very good deal, and I would negotiate very difficultly, very hard that is, to get a very below market value sale, because we have no idea how much longer the cities are going to be in hurt. There are so many vacancies. You look at the city of New York, for example, and when you have high vacancies, you get lower rents, and lower rents lead to lower prices. So you've definitely got some issues and some headwinds in New York City and San Francisco and some of the other big cities coming. And so overall, I think buying in San Francisco, not a terrible idea. So I'm going to give him a bingo on that. Bingo. Get into real estate. That's good. That's bingo number 2. He then slams margin and overconfidence in his article, which I completely agree. You got to be careful when the market's so green. Don't get overconfident. And hey, remember, when the market's green, it means it's getting riskier and more dangerous, right? And speculating on margin just sort of amplifies your risk. So keep that in mind. Then he goes into talking about probability. He says, for example, that he thinks buying stocks at record highs only has about a 30% chance of being a good idea, whereas he thinks there's a 70% probability that buying commercial real estate at depressed prices will turn out to be a good idea. He thinks that the death of the office is overblown. And I'm not sure if he's talking about Office, the show, or no, obviously he's talking about commercial offices. Here's the thing. Commercial real estate is going to suffer from massive, massive costs for pandemic mitigation going forward, the additional liability, the additional HEPA filtration, the sanitizing that'll need to be done at these properties, at least until we get a vaccine. Yeah, maybe there'll be an opportunity in commercial. I would rather find similar opportunities in residential. So overall, though, I'm happy that he's thinking about investing in real estate. Now, I do think, and this is what he's doing, he's sticking with his strategy, right? He's confident in commercial, and that's great. But I honestly don't think that Sam used this probability idea to make his analysis on Tesla. He bought Tesla because his friend liked the car. He sold because he was nervous and lost faith in the company. But the problem was, his faith in the company was based on his friend raving about his Model 3. That's not a very strong foundation, and that's why he got hurt. So overall, Sam had 4 really good bingo takeaways in this piece, but he also showed us 5 solid mistakes, and some of those were justifications that I think were actually not such great advice, and I would caution against. Now, in fairness to Sam, he came forward with his mistakes, so I owe him a big break and appreciate his humility and sharing his mistakes. But again, justifying some of these other mistakes, like saying, well, it was just funny money anyway, I'll just pay the taxes anyway, and then I'll go buy a spa, shoes, and a deck off a bathroom. All these things are going to decline in value pretty fast. They're going to stop being fun after 3 weeks. Again, you're better off buying a used spa. My jacuzzi was like $1,800, and it was $10,000 new. And hey, you know what? Maybe the cushions are decaying, but guess what? It still makes water hot. I just don't like spending money on butter. I like spending money on guns, things that make me money. So let me know what you think about the 5 mistakes I pointed out that Sam made, but then the 4 bingos that he had in his article. And let me know if you want more of these sort of Meet Kevin reacts to financial advice videos. Hopefully you enjoyed this one, and folks, we will see you next time.